everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Split, the young adult book review podcast for readers and writers. I'm Bryan Cohen, the author of the Ted Saves the World series. That's Robert Scanlon, the author of the Dreamer Chronicles. And, I think I got a leak in here. It's, dripping on my head.
Oh, a leak, not a leak.
Yeah. A leak.
Yeah. Are you a homonym, by the way?
Yeah, another homonym.
Bryan and Bryan, you know.
Yep. Leak is a homonym. Robert is not a homonym.
Not as far as I'm aware, no. I'm not of that persuasion.
Yeah. Of the homonym persuasion. So today we are doing a book called Rain, Rain, spelled R-A-I-N-R-E-I-G-N by Anne M. Martin. And after listening to a book that basically spells lots and lots of things out, it's funny to talk in that way. But this is a really fun little book that is short, sweet, like you said, about half as long as most of the recent books we've been reviewing, and aimed at a younger audience. I believe it says something like grades 4 through 7 on the Amazon page.
Yes.
So yeah, I really liked it. I thought it served its purpose quite well. Robert, did you have any initial thoughts on it?
Yeah, just before you give your summary, I thought it was really powerful, actually, and it's safe for a young audience. So it's obviously, for that reason, has been categorized and targeted that way. But you know what? Every adult should read this book. And it's
definitely parents will get a lot out of it.
Parents will get a lot out of it. It's a quick read, but not a little read, if you know what I mean. And I gave it to my daughter after I'd read it and said, "You should read this." And she said, "Oh, yeah." And then she said to me one evening, she said, "Oh, yeah, the night before last. Yeah, I started Rain, Rain. I'm going to start Rain, Rain tonight." I said, "Oh, I think you'll really enjoy it. It's really well written." And the next morning I said, "So you started Rain, Rain last night?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, what did you think then?" He said, "Oh, yeah, it's really good." She said, "I finished it too." Okay, yeah, I forget that she reads really fast. I don't forget, but you just think, how quickly can you devour 37,000 words? And
yeah, your daughter's a superstar, basically.
Well, I think so, but of course I would think that.
Yeah.
But we should first, you're, I believe you're even commercially exploiting these book blurbs now.
I am. Best page forward.
Good. Best page forward. You give them the URL in a moment, but I'll do the spruik for you because it's worth it. I love Bryan's little snippets at the start, and I try to match him every time, so I actually write my own, and I think, oh, damn, I really nailed that this time. And then Bryan does his, and I think, he got it much better. And so now you can actually purchase that service. You better get in quick, though, because I think he keeps raising the price on everyone. So if you need a book blurb written...
I haven't yet.
But it might be $3,000 by the time you go. If you're listening to this in 2020, no, it's super cheap. It's whatever it is at the moment. It's under $50 today, I believe. But by the time this airs, who knows?
Yeah. So if you want a book description and a 10-minute chat with me about your marketing, you can go to bryancohen.com/best page, and you will get it. So.
Be the best bucks you've ever spent on your book description.
Best bucks.
Best bucks. Give them a
bucks.
Give them a sample with Rain, Rain.
Sure. What fifth grader Rose Howard lacks in social skills and normal behavior, she makes up for with homonyms. She's proud of her own homonym name and the name of her dog, Rain. Not everyone understands Rose's obsessions, rules, and the other things that make her different, especially not her teachers, classmates, and her single father. When a storm hits their rural town and Rain goes missing, Rose must leave her routines behind to bring her dog back home. So, this is a small story. Like, it's short. And it doesn't tell a lot timeline-wise. It probably takes over the course of a couple of weeks.
Yes.
And
no, it's a year.
Really? Does it start at the beginning of the year?
She has the dog for a year.
Well, she has the dog for a year, but it doesn't really necessarily go so much in between when she gets the dog and when the story happens.
Okay. Well,
Like, there's not, let's say she gets the dog in March 2013, and then this story happens in October 2013. Most of the story is happening between September and November.
You're right. You're right.
I'm just saying.
The inciting incident is a flashback where the dog is brought.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I agree with you, but I disagree with you. The split.
Yeah, you're dead right. Most of the action takes place over a few weeks. Yes.
So it's a small story in that respect, but I think it's an important story.
Yes.
And it's from an atypical perspective. It's from a perspective that's hardly ever utilized in fiction. And so I think that's why this is such a key story, like you said, for all ages to read. So people should read this book. What are your first thoughts?
Well, yeah, it's told from Rose's first-person point of view. She's an autistic, high-functioning 12-year-old with has difficulty with emotions and has difficulty with in class. She has an extreme level of intelligence in some things, but her emotional intelligence is very, very low, and so she has to try and deduce everything. So it's brilliantly written from that perspective. You know, she has to deduce, I see that my father's eyes are wet. That must mean that he's sad. You know, I wonder if I should be sad too. And you know, I mean, I'm not quoting verbatim, but it's that kind of book. And you know, if you can't read this book without feeling something strong for Rose, I don't know why you should be reading, but you know, so it's not young adult and a classic. It's not 16-year-old girl falls for bad boy and you know, fights the apocalypse. It's nothing like that whatsoever. As you say, the story setting itself is local. You know, there's no grand scale apart from the fact that there is a tumultuous hurricane that comes down the east coast, yeah, so. It's told within the perspective of really just a handful of characters. It's not what you call epic. Yet, for me, it was deep and so brilliant to read. This, you just felt like you might be an autistic 12-year-old.
Yeah,
which is a bizarre thing for somebody of my age to say, and a 12-year-old female at that. And so, you know, I think, oh yeah, dream on. But you know, for an author to be able to create that world that you can immerse yourself in, I was kind of disappointed. I wanted to read more. If you've read books like Wonder or Counting by Sevens, and you like those, then you definitely like this. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I haven't read those. I'll have to read those.
You will, Bryan. They're terrific. They're along the lines of this, same sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, what struck me about this book is it portrayed autism in a way that didn't beat you over the head with it. It really just got you, like you said, it got you into the mindset, and then it went with the story, and you just were along for the ride. And it seemed, of course, I'm sure it's difficult to do, but it seemed almost effortless on Martin's part.
Yes.
It didn't feel really wrong. It just felt like you were in there, and I thought that was great.
Yeah, well, some of the Amazon reviews, the positive ones, of course, and let's face it, there are no negative reviews for this book. Zero.
All 4s and 5s.
There's 1, 3, I think, maybe, but they're all...
Okay, 1, 3.
Yeah, but there are no 1s and 2 stars. And you know, some of the top reviewers are teachers who teach autistic kids, and they're saying this is fantastic. You know, it just so illustrates what happens from our perspective as teachers in a classroom. Not that there's lots of classroom scenes, there are a few. Most aren't.
No.
But some of the autistic outbursts are fantastic. You know, when things get too much for her, when she's watching the Weather Channel, when there are suddenly too many things on screen, she has to kind of look away, clamp her hands over her ears, and count in prime. And so it's just hilarious. It doesn't lead into it. There's no warning. All of a sudden, you get this dialogue: 2, 3, 5, 7, and then the father going, "Rose, shut up, go away." You know, it's just it's so good. Such a good read.
Yeah, and I mean, you really care about everyone in this book. You care about Rose. You care about the uncle. you feel bad for the dad, even though the dad is obviously not the kind of person who should be taking care of an autistic child, which I thought was a great. I mean, that's just a great device in itself. It's
Yeah, well,
that you've got like so many stories that maybe have an autistic child treat the treat the situation with kids' gloves, but this it's like no, there's a dad who really says like no, she's not going to a special school. I can't
yes,
afford that. I
yeah,
can't take her to there.
yeah.
So no, of
He's
course not. I'm not going to do that.
a crummy dad. He's the
Yeah,
antagonist, you know.
yeah.
So I think we had, and I must say thank you again to Shireen for recommending this book,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
it's really probably wouldn't have naturally picked it, although it's a
Mm-hmm.
subject matter I really like, and I've read the other books similar as I mentioned before. But we've had some dialogue as well as one of our listeners, I think it's Michelle. Or somebody wrote in anyway, talking about character development and how it'd be nice for us to. No, I
I think
apologise.
it
I
was.
can't remember. It may have been.
I think it was.
And I thought this is a perfect story to talk about character development because, in books like The Fault in Our Stars and All the Bright Places, you've got parents who are caring and who are the
Yeah.
carers and are clearly caring for the protagonists in the book who have their own issues. Yet here you've got a disabled child, perhaps, or at least someone who has difficulty functioning in the normal world, but
Yeah.
is forced to function in the normal world because the father doesn't know how to care, is placed in circumstances that make it difficult for him to care. We don't empathise with him. We don't empathise with his drinking habits, his aggression, his lack of compassion for Rose, his frustration and lack of patience with her. When you see his brother, her Uncle Weldon, being the perfect dad really, and
Mm-hmm.
or trying to be, but also trying not to interfere, and those two supporting characters, it's so well written as well. It's really
Yeah.
lovely.
And I think, character development. They speak differently. They have different facial reactions
Yes.
to what's going on. They, uh, I think, even just that, the speaking differently and the facial recognitions, and you kind of just feel in the way that they talk that they have different things going on underneath the surface. You don't have to say what's going on underneath the
No.
surface, but you can tell by their actions and what they say. And in a book of 37,000 words, you need to cut to the chase with those characters. And,
Yes.
and I think that she did such a great job of developing them without a lot of real estate.
And through the eyes of a 12-year-old girl who has high functioning
Yeah.
autism. So the fact that you understand the characters are different, it's from this different worldview as well. So it's not just understanding
Yeah.
they're different because she experiences different emotions, or it's because she notices things about them, and
Mm-hmm.
I just, and her world is so rule bound, or she needs it to be rule bound, and so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the way the characters are developed is through their lack of adhering to the rules, or they're adhering to the rules. So I think it's really,
Yeah.
really just so clever, and the fact that her father actually does have an arc, so it's not just
Mm-hmm.
character development from who do I need as a character in this book to make it interesting to read, but the fact that
Mm-hmm.
he also has his journey, and it impacts heavily on Rose.
Yeah.
Some of his decisions impact heavily on Rose, and then you've got the external conflict that comes in with the hurricane. I mean, it's a short book, but holy moly, there's a lot of things that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And they all just really pull you towards the next anchor in the story. You just keep going forward.
Exactly. There's definitely want to know what happens next. What was the audio like? I'm curious about that because it's first person point of
So
view.
they spell out all the words.
Yes.
All
Okay.
the homonyms.
Yes.
So every time, so you say, my dog Rain, Rain, Rein, Reign.
Yes.
And I think that allowed the narrator to characterize more. I've heard her narrate one of the previous books we've read.
Okay.
So I think she's a popular YA narrator. And So I already think I had a relationship, like,
Yes,
I enjoyed that
you heard
narrator
the
before,
voice.
so
Yeah.
it was nice to hear it again, and kind of fun to hear her voicing a younger character.
Because we should
But I
explain.
mean,
Yeah, we should explain.
hmm,
Every time that Rose speaks, she's constantly introducing her obsession is with homonyms. Words that sound the same. Let's just make it a simple
yeah,
definition.
I'm
So,
spelled different.
so like Brian. Brian can be spelt two ways with a Y or an I. Right, when somebody is right, they're correct. They're RIGHT, or they can write a book WRITE. So, in the case of the text of this book, every time she talks about homonyms, the homonym is in a bracket after, and sometimes there are two or three or four.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just it's fantastic.
And there's multiple chapters in the book that are like something interesting about
Yes,
homonyms.
yes,
And I
yes.
thought, and it's just cute. And I mean, that leads into my first writer takeaway is that Martin went all in with the
Oh
homonyms.
yeah,
And I think it was a smart way to tell the story
yes,
because high functioning autistic people have fixations.
yes,
And this was a fixation that was interesting, a little bit comical,
yes,
and it gave you something to kind of root for when the character finds new homonyms. And then at some point, like you usually have the other kids kind of sniggering at her, but then you have some instances in which they side with her, and it's so great when you see that. And because kids can be mean, and
mm,
an autistic child won't necessarily be able to pick up on it. So it's great to see this device being used in multiple ways to make you go deeper into the story. And I think some people might get annoyed with the device, but obviously, judging by the reviews, there weren't very many.
no. And I suppose it's going to attract from the book description itself a particular type of reader
Sure.
who is willing to go into the world as experienced by somebody different from your average human.
Yeah.
And I think it's really sensitively told. It's at no point,
Mm-hmm.
as you said before, do you feel like the whole autism thing is. We probably talked more about it than it really features in the book. In the book,
Yeah.
it actually comes through because of who Rose is,
Mm-hmm.
and you end up quite enjoying her take on the world. And the
Yeah.
fact that people are supposed to use their indicators or the directional, as she calls them,
Yeah.
at stop signs. Stop the bus! He
It's like,
didn't use his directional. That's against the law. It's like- and they all think,
yeah.
stop the bus. There's somebody running out in front of it. No, it's because the driver didn't use the directional. And it's
It's
just,
funny.
but she's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. But
Yeah.
in most cases, most of us just let that stuff slip, but she doesn't let anything slip.
Uh-oh. And it upsets her, and you get upset because you don't want her to be upset. So it's
Yes.
it's very affecting.
Yes.
Um, this is a small story with real stakes.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
obviously there's the stuff with the dad, but there's stuff with the dog. There's stuff with the hurricane. You don't. There's 37,000 words, but you feel like a lot happens. You feel
Oh, yeah.
like a person's world has changed from beginning to end in many ways.
Yes.
And so it does a lot with a little. And I think that's something all writers should aspire to.
I agree. I actually wrote this. There's not a wasted word or sentence.
Yes.
And I think that's, to write an economical book that tells such a powerful story. And it's not expected either, because you really feel, I mean, I was kind of on edge thinking, oh, this writer's going to do something horrible to Rose. And
Yeah.
she does, but it doesn't happen in the way you expect. And the way Rose
Yeah.
reacts isn't the way I expect as a normal, emotional human being who doesn't process the world in the same way as Rose. So I loved
Yeah.
it. I really loved it. And
Yeah, me too.
you can probably tell. But I do think, and because it's a fast read, there's so much to learn for novice writers in this book. It was, I think, an ambitious project to carry off, and this was an experienced children's writer doing it. So let's be fair
Yeah.
to Anne M. Martin. She She also gets high praise for her previous work,
Mm-hmm.
but this is, definitely an outlier in terms of the type of story and why you would undertake it, and the research that you'd have to do, and you wouldn't want to make it wrong because you just get
Correct, yeah.
you get panned, and even things
Yeah.
like using the homonyms in brackets or spelling them out in the audiobook is a risk, and so you
Mm-hmm.
have to say, well, I'm willing to take the reader along that risky path because I think I can make it work, and that's ambitious.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And I think that it was great of her to take on this project. And I'm kind of disappointed it isn't more of a popular book than it is.
Well, up until our review,
It's going to shoot through the roof now.
man, oh man, yeah. If
People are
this
going to
is
be
not,
talking.
look, I really do think Spielberg going to be on the phone
Mm-hmm.
because it would make a really sweet movie. Actually, I think.
Yeah. I think it would be a good
And there's
movie.
elements of high drama in it too, and certainly
Mm-hmm.
some of the scenes in the school, as you said, where the kids are kind of being mean and picking on her. I mean,
Yeah.
it'd pluck at the heartstring. I mean, this is both a happy and sad book, and that's what you need in a movie, isn't it?
Yes. You need levels, emotional levels.
A roller coaster. Speaking of roller
Roller
coasters,
coaster.
shouldn't we take away?
Woo.
Oh,
Sure. I'll do the first takeaway
that'd be great.
if you're okay with it.
I'm okay with that.
All right. So I think that this is kind of a two-part thing. When you portray a character with limitations, your story doesn't need to be limited. You try to portray the vulnerable characters by embracing their idiosyncrasies, not making it about that they have autism, that they have a disease. Just make it part of the character and part of the story that the reader wants to continue.
In a way, really, it's part of the inciting incident, isn't it? It's the fact that she has this condition, and so it makes the story what it is, but without making it about that. So yeah, well said. I'm going to go with a one aimed at squarely at young adult readers. This might be a story with a 12-year-old in it, but remember, Ender's Game has a 6-year-old as the main protagonist. So don't dismiss it for the age of the main protagonist. I personally think
Ender is 6, really?
in the book. It starts out that way, but when he graduates, he's 14 or 15, I think.
Got it.
But in the movie, they cut that right back because it's not believable. Even in the book, it's really hard to believe. Aside, I think Rain is still a really good young adult read. Also for teens, because I do think a lot of teenagers might identify with Rose's predicament. Where does she fit in the world? She gets confused. She doesn't understand the rules and why people break the rules. I mean, I think there's still a lot of learning there for young people. And even if it's, if you're a young reader or if you're a teacher and you want to have a book that's great for class discussion, this is one of them.
Yeah, I agree.
In a better way than Never Let Me Go that we reviewed last week. So if I had to, if I had to choose between those two for class discussion, this would be it every time.
Every time, for sure. My last takeaway is tell a story at the length that it requires.
Yeah.
She could have said more with this. There could have been a whole thing into the school. There could have been a whole thing into her condition, her diagnosis, et cetera, but dealt with those real quick and told the story bare bones. And I mean, this is something I'm going to be working on probably more next year than this year. I want to write a series that has books that are around this length as the novels in it, 35,000 to 45,000 words. And that's going to mean I need to be really economical. And I'm going to need to tell a story that fits that length too.
Yes.
So that's going to be a challenge. And I think that with maybe the digital age allowing for shorter books to go out more than the 80s and 90s did in traditional publishing, you can tell stories at different lengths again now. And
yes.
I think you should be ready, willing, and able to tell a shorter story if that's what fits the tale you're telling.
I heard you sent a copy of this book to George R. R. Martin, actually, and said, there's a lot to learn from this, George. I think you can do things a little bit shorter.
And then he told me his RR actually stands for rain. So he took it to heart.
Nice.
Took it to heart.
Nice.
How about a prompt?
Let's do it.
All right. What would you do if a member of your family had autism? Would you act differently toward them? Why or why not? Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Keep it short.
I'd just like to point out, prompt of the week. Week or week? Prompt of the week.
Yeah, that's a homonym.
Yeah. Week. Ta-da. It doesn't get you thinking about it, though, and I like the fact that
Many homonyms.
Yeah, one of our classmates starts thinking about it. I mean, I've been interested in them before because they're great for word puns, of course, and I like word puns.
Yes.
And, and I'm a dad, so you've got to have dad jokes. Dad jokes always have
need
word
dad
puns.
jokes.
But prompt of the week. So what is the prompt of the strong?
You can answer the prompt of the strong at thesplitbookreviews.com. You can email us your book recommendations. Like you said, this was a recommendation by Shireen, right?
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
That was really great. We're really glad you're listening and sending these recommendations along, Shireen and the rest of the crew. And you can email us at podcast@thesplitbookreviews.com for that. And you can leave us a review on iTunes, which helps us to reach a wider audience. Next week, we're reviewing Legend by Marie Lu. And I've seen this around. It's kind of in the same genre as Ted. It's, so I see it around all the time on the also bots and whatnot. So I'm really excited to read this one.
I'm looking forward to reviewing it too. We've got a string of wonderful books coming up, and thanks again. Some of those are recommendations, so keep them coming. And those iTunes reviews, that's what's going to make us heroes. People take notice of us, not because we want that, but because we want Spielberg to make rain rain.
Come on. Just one review from everyone in the world.
Hey, why don't you get George write your review?
Hey, Rain.
Yeah.
Hey, George Rain.
I'm going to call him that from now on.
Come on. George Rain Martin. You should. I think that's a good idea.
Game of Thrones. Thrones.
Yeah. Throne.
Yeah. Throne.
Throne is one. Thrones.
Yeah, debatable really, isn't it? Throws is probably, you wouldn't say thrones.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thrones him out the window. Come back next week, guys.
Please.
I'm Bryan Cohen. That's Robert Scanlon. This is The Split, and we look forward to reviewing more and more books every single dang week.
Absolutely. And that's week. WEEK.
Thank you guys for watching. Somewhere on this page is a subscribe button to The Split channel. We do reviews every week. We would love it if you followed us every single week. Isn't that right, Robert?
That's exactly right. Follow us now. Hit the subscribe button.
Do it.